Hello, friends, and welcome to the Intrazone, Late Night Edition. I'm your host, Captain SharePoint, taking you on another journey through the fabulous land of recovering from a chest cold.
I can tell that this episode is going to go viral because I can see the virus just creeping across the microphones towards me like, no!
I'm not contagious anymore, but
Good.
Fortunately, the internet, as far as we can tell, does only transmits information, not disease. So.
All right. Well, what's nice is there will be no frogs harmed in this episode. It will just sound as if Chris ate one or two of them.
And so we should go through our usual, I'm not Captain Midnight or whatever I just said. I'm Chris McNulty, and I'm here with the host of the Intrazone.
Hello, and welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the viral Microsoft 365 intelligent intranet. On today's episode, we talk with Sue Hanley. She is an IA, information architect and knowledge management expert, and Microsoft MVP. We also talk with Melissa Torres with Sue. She's a senior program manager on the SharePoint team. And later in the episode with Matt Wolodarsky, who is a senior program manager on the SharePoint team, who is behind the recent intranet workshop that's given by Microsoft in a lot of different ways that Matt will explain.
You know, when I saw us putting this topic on the calendar, it's just a perfect time for this because while we're continuing to innovate, I really think we've reached a level of sophistication and maturity in our core sites, pages, portals, internet offerings. And kind of with the surge of Teams, there's this whole other vector about you can deliver all of these great engagements and information to browsers, but you can also deliver them to a digital hub, to Microsoft Teams. And I think it's perfect time for us to take on this topic.
I think it's a great time to take on the topic, and it's also, we hope, through talking with Sue and Melissa and Matt, putting a lot of clarity on what is out there. There's common questions around the internet. Can it do this? Can I do that? With Teams in the mix, when should I, do X in Teams? Can I bring stuff from the internet into Teams and leverage it as a part of a conversation that I'm having with my team? And what's nice is as you say, we're at that inflection point where most of our answers are yes. Some of it is digging in. What are the different pieces that attribute to the overall collective? We call it the intelligent intranet. That could be in a scenario where I want to bring better training to onboard new employees to give them guidance on what we are as a company, who our leaders are, what our product portfolio looks like, and then to blend that into maybe a workflow that takes them on a lightweight journey through multiple parts of the intranet. And maybe some of those and then are specific conversations with their manager, and on and on. And I again, just agree with you. We do have sometimes a lot of product names that we'll mention, features that we'll mention, but a lot of it is in answer to what do people expect from an intelligent intranet. And based on that feedback and based on our roadmap, which is now delivered, we have a lot of great answers and what people can do to make it their own, but have it be something that drives a lot of employee engagement at scale through the company.
It's a great topic for another reason. There are many organizations who have done fantastic things with our technology alongside our partners' technology. We'll talk in a little while about the Nielsen-Norman report, which spotlights what they see as the 10 best intranets in the world, Microsoft and beyond. But there's this other kind of intranet that's out there, and we've all encountered them. And if this is your organization, don't worry, there's hope. But you ask them about their portals and intranets and yeah, I think we have one. And they show it to you. And it's based on SharePoint 2010. And there's an announcements part in classic mode in the center of the page. And the first announcement is, welcome to the intranet. And the second announcement is about the 2014 holiday party. And there's no other announcements after that.
Yeah, the biggest review of your existing portal, if you want to ask your question, should we consider moving to this intelligent intranet I hear Microsoft and partners talking about? If the timestamp on any of the news announcements that are still visible at the top level appear to be longer than, 2-3 years ago, that's a great indicator. And we're being cheeky, but the reality is a move to some other level technology or some migration of content or just a change in the internet is no small scope. And so when people who knew how they got to where they are, even if it's an older technology, they knew that it took a long time to get there with a lot of stakeholder buy-in and planning and just awareness of what is possible.
Right.
But if a customer's invested in Office 365 or Microsoft 365 at that level, they should know they have a lot of capabilities. And as you'll hear when we talk to Sue and Melissa and Matt, they have a lot of resources to help them get there, whether that's migration, whether it's technology awareness, or it's actual getting started with piloting and programs.
There's a double-edged sword there. When expectations are accidentally that low, it's easy to beat expectations. But some of the workshops and resources that I know Matt wants to talk about, it's a focus of how do I envision something I didn't know I could ask for? And if you look at the kind of systems for engagement that you have, just with the news engine, and how news distributes to teams and to email, but it distributes across this range of websites to search, to hub sites, to all of these aggregators. And it's a lightweight way for someone to be able to create information in a format that's much more permanent than Yammer, Teams, and email, which are still searchable, but they're transitory. But being able to create these lightweight but durable assets that help people get engaged, stay engaged, and become engaged when they join an organization. It's just one of the examples of things people don't know to ask for that. They have to be shown.
I agree, and I can hear from our audience that they are asking or wanting to know more. So let's get into the good stuff. Coming up next is our discussion with Sue and Melissa to discuss the strategy and approach to the intelligent intranet.
Up next on the Intrazone, we're sitting down or standing up with Sue Hanley and Melissa Torres to talk about the intelligent intranet. This has been a topic that's been central since the relaunch of SharePoint in 2016, but today we're really happy to be able to explore it in more depth with two deeply versed experts in the topic.
I would say they are intelligent people for the intelligent intranet.
Precisely. So Melissa and Sue, welcome to the Intrazone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Super excited to be on this call with you guys.
Awesome. Mark and I know you quite well, but our audience is going to learn more about you through the course of today's episode. But could you start by introducing yourselves to how you came to this wonderful technology? Let's start with Melissa. How did you get started with technology, and a little bit about where you've been working and how you got to this?
Sure. So I am a program manager on the SharePoint Experiences team. I've been in SharePoint actually for about 7 years. I was introduced to SharePoint when in my first internship ever, I was given the role of being the person who manages the SharePoint for the team. And
and where was that?
I was actually part of Microsoft IT, so I started in the IT side of the house. So I was that person on that team, and then I actually loved it. I became the expert. It was the perfect example of something that I immediately took over and became an expert in, and everybody was like, wow, how did you do this? How did you create that calendar view? How did you, organize all our files together? Thank you so much. And so I knew I wanted to come back to this. So a few years later, after I came back to Microsoft, I got a job at SharePoint. I've been doing that ever since. And my focus in the last few years have been really thinking about the intranet architecture, kind of driving that intranet intelligence, and really thinking about, how is the best way to organize your site in a model that is both flexible and useful to everyone. And so, that's been what my focus has been. And I also work on other areas like site designs to establish consistency, and we're also responsible for things like the site creation experience.
I have to say, someone who works in information architecture, you could not have a better Twitter handle than Mother of Hubs.
I know. It was perfect. Came up at the SharePoint conference, and we were thinking about having something fun where we could go and promote the usage of hubs, but also use it for kind of letting people know what the new stuff was going to be. And so we thought, hey, I've been the person driving hubs from the beginning, so it makes sense. Let's use it. And I've been superly surprised and excited to see how many people have actually followed it. And very exciting.
So alongside the mother of hubs is the president of Susan Hanley, LLC. Sue, tell us a little bit more about yourself and all the things that you contribute, I think, on a daily basis to the SharePoint community.
Thanks, Mark. Well, I actually have been working with SharePoint since before it had a name. I was running the knowledge management initiative for a global consulting firm, and Microsoft bought what was then called Tahoe to us to get some feedback. Fast forward a few years, and I was leading the portal practice for Dell, basically all SharePoint all the time. And now I have my own consulting practice, and I basically spend all of my time focused on helping organizations do what I usually call the people part of Office 365 solutions. And I focus on knowledge management, intranet design, collaboration, and I specialize in information architecture and governance and adoption.
And I've heard many of your customers would want you to have your own Twitter handle beyond Susan Hanley, and that would be the What Would Sue Do handle, correct?
Maybe.
I think so. I know I often have quoted you on the show and certainly have referred also to Melissa. So in this space, we think of you both as a lot of mind share from the intelligent internet. No matter what you've called it in the past, it is now an intelligent intranet.
Yeah. Sue, it's funny you were talking about that, and I remember because I've known you for years as well, going back to the days with Dell, et cetera. And I remember in the late 90s hearing that Microsoft is working on a new platform which is going to solve all of your problems for portals and knowledge management moving forward. So now it's the 20s. How is 2020 shaping up so far in those realms for each of you?
Well, for me, it's incredibly busy. This week I'm starting 2 really exciting projects, all of which are related or have sort of future thinking, looking forward to Project Cortex, because I think there's a knowledge management component to both of them. And for me right now in 2020, I am counting down until I head west for my annual Sundance Film Festival ski trip. I may be back by the time this comes out, but right now I am so heads down focused on getting ready for that.
There's a SharePoint movie at Sundance? Am I getting that correct? Or
no, there's really nothing to do with SharePoint, and I will just be skiing in the day and watching movies at night.
I'm going to try to submit one. It's called The Dawn of Metadata.
There you go.
That's a working title. So, Melissa, how's your 2020 looking so far?
Well, I'm super excited for 2020. First of all, I get to deliver a lot of the features that we showcased at Ignite this year, particularly in the space of like hubs, which I'm, mother of hubs, near and dear to my heart, like associated hubs and permissions, audience targeting in the nav. I also get to see other awesome features that I know a lot of customers have been waiting for, like multilingual pages. I'm excited to see all that customer goodness that we've been working on for quite some while finally kind of reach our customers and have them start using it and giving us feedback. The other part of me is also excited about the next set of work. So I've been on this journey of releasing hubs and kind of growing adoption, but now it's really a moment to think about what is the next set of work that's going to be really impactful and listening to customers' feedback to see like what would be the next, big set of work. And so I'm starting to think about what that is and building up a plan for that set of work that we want to tackle next. Anywhere from, addressing global navigation discussions to branding improvements and more around site designs and all that good stuff. So I see 2020 as a year for me of delivery, but also opportunity to figure out what the next set of work is going to be.
So, Sue, I know you've been involved in a lot of those planning discussions around how does someone launch, or in many cases, how does someone reinvent or make over their intranet? There is always the tension between saying, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to roll out this hub architecture, or we're going to move to these particular parts on the page. And then there are the business drivers. How do you balance those two as you're approaching the design phase?
Well, I like to start by banning one particular word. I call it the R word, requirements. Because when people voice requirements, they're often rooted in the intranet that they know, not necessarily what is possible or even practical. So I never, ever, ever gather requirements. I always talk about business outcomes and business or information challenges. And then, of course, from these, we can derive requirements for the solutions. But if I'm going to think about sort of, Project Runway Intranet Makeover Edition, I want to start with what we want to get to. What are the business outcomes? What are the challenges that we're trying to solve? Because if we don't look there, we might miss a great opportunity to leverage something out of the box or something that might be coming up in the feature set that we don't have to build custom because Melissa's going to build it for us.
And as you've seen Melissa and team deliver a lot of new features, big and small, for the intelligent intranet, over the course of the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years, Sue, how much have those conversations changed? I know you have a lot of questions you ask, you have a structured approach, but in that realm of new things have been delivered, how much does it change that conversation? Or is it the same conversation with different outcomes, but based on sort of the reality of today?
Yeah, I think, I think the questions that I ask are still the same. It's still the same sort of basic conversation, but what's different is how much we can now deliver in Office 365. So it used to be, well, we have to wait for that or that's coming. And now I think what's really changed is so much more is now available that for those organizations that are still sort of on-prem waiting for things to be ready in the cloud, it feels to me like the cloud is ready. It's time to go.
So let me ask you about that a bit, because one thing over the past 5 or 6 years since I've joined Microsoft, watching us be much more transparent with our roadmap and things we're announcing, we're intending, there's always a next thing coming. And we usually telegraph those weeks, if not months in advance. Do you see that is... Are we slowing down adoption? Because there is always going to be one new thing that's coming that people have heard and said, that's the thing I really need.
I don't know if you're slowing down adoption. I think you're helping people prioritize where to spend their calories now and what they can wait for. So I think that's why it's really, really important to gather business outcomes. What are we trying to get to? What's critically important to the business? Because we can align then our strategic approach to deployment and adoption based on sort of all the great things that you do telegraph about what's coming.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure that it was a mission critical delay for organizations to say, I'm not going to do more until Microsoft ships a weather part. Right?
Right.
Which I think is actually, it's a fantastic way of getting more engagement and personalization and additional content into that environment. But there is the risk of always waiting for the next thing.
Right. So it's a balance thing.
Okay.
And by the way, I mean, if you're waiting really long and you really need something, that's how you know whether you should choose to either build it yourself or look for a third-party solution to deliver what you need today.
Melissa, in that same vein as these customer outcomes, certainly there's still a solid IT foundation. From the Microsoft approach, when you think about designing for the intelligent intranet today and going forward, how would you describe our strategy in this space? Certainly knowing what Sue just described as not just thinking of what are these unique requirements, but really what customers are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So really for us, intranets, the reason why you hear us talk about the intelligent intranet is because it's what we consider a mission critical tool of digital transformation. And it's really about bringing multiple pieces of information and people together. So our strategy is, and all the features we've built, like with home sites and hubs, is really to empower organizations to build experiences that keep employees engaged and that enables them to kind of share knowledge. So that's why we continue to invest in areas like intranet architecture that play such an important role. Home sites, hubs, branding, site designs are all the tools that we kind of convey to use for that. And by the way, like all our intelligent intranet strategy is primarily influenced from feedback from customers, right? So every single time we build something about bringing information together and people together and enabling knowledge sharing, it's because we've heard directly from our customers through all our different channels that that's really what they want to deliver to people. And so whether it's, through conferences, user voice surveys, it's primarily influenced from feedback from them that that's exactly what their employees are looking for. And so we want to enable those organizations to give their employees what they need to get work done.
It's interesting. One of the other trends I've seen us take a little more strategically over the past 4 years, as we've put a renewed emphasis on not just design, but on responsive design. And if you think about in responsive design, you have those classic 3 scenarios. What does it look like on a phone? What about in a tablet? What about in a desktop browser? And we've really watched kind of the rise of the fourth form factor, which is Teams itself, as being, how are we going to shape this content if it's being delivered through a Teams frame as distinct from those other three? Have you seen that?
I definitely have, from my point of view, it's definitely top of mind for me and the rest of the PM team. We definitely consider, and you probably saw, for those of you who attended Ignite, that we tend to talk a lot about integration points with Teams. So it's not only about the different form factors like you mentioned, Chris, but it's also about how we bring the goodness of SharePoint within Teams and how we align to that so we form a cohesive picture across the board, across all of O365. So yeah, from my standpoint, which, different, it'd be interesting to see what Sue thinks from what she hears, but at least from the PM team in SharePoint, it's top of mind for us and really something that we strive to have the conversation of. It's not just our UI, but how it transcends our UI into other partners like Teams.
Sue, do you have any thoughts or feedback on the fourth screen?
Yeah, I actually was just saying that one of the most exciting things for me announced at Ignite was the integration of Yammer, the Yammer app inside Teams, because not only is the content about the intelligent intranet and team collaboration, but that other way that we connect in organizations is in communities of practice, which cross teams often and sort of address the entire organization. So bringing that whole story together and enabling people to interact with the we, the me, and the us all from a single place, I think, is just huge in terms of adoption and also ease of getting work done.
So I'd like to pivot off of that me, we, us framing, because we at Microsoft, we've used some similar framing over the past few years with inner loop and outer loop to help people understand the problems they're trying to solve so they know which technology to attach to those problems in which circumstances. I'd contrast it with something that Thomas Friedman from the New York Times said about the world being flat and being able to break down barriers and disintermediate suppliers and the flow of information and all the ways that things in the 21st century are supposed to be frictionless. Translating that to intranet design, which may be a bit of a stretch, but is the intranet flat? And do you see flat intranets as being an extension of the Friedman paradigm about how information should flow?
Well, I think 100% the world of modern intranets is flat. And if I could ban the S word, subsites, I would. I mean, in a flat intranet world, we have the opportunity to make much smarter governance decisions. And we can also be much more effective at the one thing that we know will happen in every organization, and that's change. And to try to scope the site to the unit of work, the smallest possible unit of work, just makes our life easier and allows us to make connections based on the thing we know will happen. And that is that the way we think about the world and the organization of our content will change. So if we treat the intranet world as every unit of work is a site, or really a site collection, and we don't have any subsites, we can really organize our content to tell whatever kind of story we need to get work done.
Melissa, do you support that if we think in terms of think of hub sites before subsites and this notion of a flat intranet and all will be okay?
Absolutely. Plus 10 on Sue's statement. We really push to move forward into the flexibility that creating sites separately into their own site collections and what it brings to bring them together via hubs as the future of the modern intranet and the flexibility that brings. And I think it's a much better starting point than what we used to do in the past. So I would say the intranet being flat really at the end of the day really helps you because it gives you the flexibility that you need to make changes, to adjust to changes as quickly as you need. It also doesn't mean that everything you do has to be set in stone. So it gives you that flexibility. And at the same time, you still get a lot of the same functionality you used to get, but now in this new world, plus and more,
Yep.
and some new stuff.
So, Melissa, it's interesting. One thing that we sometimes analyze this from a single customer perspective, but at Microsoft, we get telemetry that lets us look at adoption and trends from a meta-customer perspective. How are the things that we're putting out there translating and changing the way that people think of and adopt some of these technologies? What are some of the things that you've seen with our customers or even internally at Microsoft that help you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a prime example first within Microsoft. So we used to use the S word. We used to use subsites. But I would say we've really embraced the hub before you sub mantra. And the best example of that is Microsoft Web, which is our internal quote unquote home site for the entire company. That is a home site, but it's also a hub. And we use it because it brings together multiple sites from the different regions. So as you know, Microsoft is a big organization with subsidiaries in all different types of places. And so we've created a single hub, and we have site collections for each of the different regions. And just in that, like, you see the benefits of, something were to happen where something were to pop open, we could, a new location were to pop open, easy to create a new one. They have their own set of owners, they're managed, but then it comes together as the part of the rest of the family. We've also had discussions that maybe we shouldn't be doing this on a regional base, but switch more to be more divisional based. And that flexibility to be able to switch around and do that, it would be fairly easy for our admins to do that. So I would say from an internal perspective, we've crossed 100 hubs, which was great and very exciting for me, but proves the point that we're seeing value in the feature. And like you mentioned, Chris, we do get the benefit of seeing our adoption trends across not just internally to Microsoft, but across our customers. And we're seeing not only the terms of usage, but we're seeing a lot of happy customers that come back and tell us, hey, I do enjoy the flexibility. You guys were right that this was the way to model it going forward.
And I know we're working on a paper to be published soon that will articulate really the state of MSW now, which, not to break the news, but certainly aligned with the timing of it, that the MSW is leveraging the mega menu. It's leveraging home sites at the root site. It's leveraging all the modern capabilities around news. And I know I could keep going on. And I think that's a value for people to see. Not only are we dog fooding our own material, but it is actually now an experience that's being released to over 100,000 users. To transition a little bit to Sue on this same point, when you heard Melissa describing the makeup of MSW and how it was being thought of to be applied to the organization or divisions, I know in the back of my mind you've had hundreds of these discussions. What does it sound like to hear, from Melissa, how MSW is being thought of in relation to how you've heard other customers talk around this same content?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to learn sort of how is Microsoft using their own technology to solve problems. I think a lot of organizations, whether they're the size of Microsoft or not, want to know how do other organizations solve this problem. I'm so excited about home sites, by the way. I mean, I think that's such a great feature for intranets. And the thing for me that really makes that really drive the whole intelligent intranet experience is that the mega menu on the home site is carried forward into the SharePoint start page. So no matter how I enter the world of SharePoint from office.com or from my intranet browser homepage, which is often set to the intranet homepage, I'm going to get that full story of the intranet from a navigation perspective. And I really, really love that.
Okay, we love that you love that. We want to transition to talk about design. And really, we have been talking about it. When we talk about the internet, there's much more of a focus on design than you think of some of the collaborative ways that team sites are used. So in that vein of design, the Nielsen-Norman Group recently published their year's 10 best intranets, a report that goes pretty deep on all of the winners in what they did, the teams behind them that actually work on the intranet and the content. And oftentimes we see half, if not a lot more, that SharePoint is the chosen platform. We'll post a link to that particular report, and certainly if you look at years past, SharePoint is always in the mix and always in the forefront of people thinking about where do I put my intranet. But the question that I want to ask is, How has design changed from your perspective, moving from on-premises to online? Sue, what are some of the things that you've seen change?
Well, back in the on-prem day, the most frequent comment I heard at the start of intranet projects was, can you not make it look like SharePoint? So we had to invest a lot of time and expense making SharePoint look better. So today, from a design perspective, we have sort of beautiful modern experiences in SharePoint Online and a lookbook to show us the art of the possible. So we can spend more of our time and money and budget on content and experiences rather than just the design of kind of the look and feel. And that feels to me like putting the right emphasis in the right place to drive more business value.
It's interesting. You just reminded me, I remember nearly 10 years ago working on a project with friend of the show, Derek Cash Peterson, and we spent probably the first 2 months of a portal design project matching their commercial website, which had been built using Dreamweaver and WebSphere and a whole bunch of non-Microsoft technologies and like the pixel perfect, making it look seamless. And I think that's one thing that I think we've made simpler.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember writing about how the design manager was supported in online with the expectation that people may be designing their sites around a very robust product like Dreamweaver and then importing them into SharePoint, with the value at the time being we convert it and make sense of it and SharePointerize it. But the value now is you really start with a really beautiful place to put your content, one that's mobile, one that is responsive to what people are actually doing, so it's personalized with that who's doing what and what are they interested in. But to be fair to the report, and sometimes, on this show we like to take the view of not just a Microsoft-centric view. And Sue, I think in this space, you look at other awards that are given out in this area around intranets. When you see people building non-Microsoft intranets or portals, what are some of those things you can learn from the patterns of just what people are trying to accomplish?
Well, I want to just sort of put one sort of emphasis when it comes to design, because I think this is important when you think about intranets, no matter what the platform is. People aren't coming back to the intranet because it looks good. They're coming back because it helps them get work done. And so it is really important that you balance both how it looks with the delivery of content. And so when I look at intranets of any kind, no matter what the platform is, the most important thing for me is, are the people who are using it able to get the information they need to get their jobs done? Is there a team focused on making sure that content is accurate, current, reliable, up to date? Because honestly, the worst thing you can do is have an intranet that looks really pretty that no one's maintaining the content.
We've all seen the semi-abandoned seaside amusement park intranet designs where, welcome to our new site, dated 2017. Because those things are usually clues. There's nothing in there that I want to pay attention to. But I do want to kind of hold you on that non-Microsoft intranets and portals. Because when I look at something like the Nielsen Norman report, I'm always curious what I can learn from what people outside of our immediate sphere have done to either approximate things that we have or to come up with new technologies. What are some of the things that you've seen interesting that are happening generally, whether they're Microsoft-based or not?
Well, for me, the thing that really sort of gets me really engaged when I look at an intranet design is the degree to which activities and tasks that people have to accomplish are sort of the me content is brought into the us content of the intranet. So not just all about news, but also all about actions that I need to take, upcoming tasks, things I need to get done. Because when you look at that kind of an intranet, then that's how you know that people are getting business value.
Yeah, I mean, when I see intranets that are designed to integrate, let's be realistic. There are people whose activity tracking is happening in a platform like Salesforce, and whether we're looking at partner technology or a completely non-Microsoft solution, I think there's a lot more personal resonance when you see things that are meaningful to you in those experiences.
Correct. And not just news, right? Things that I need to take action on. So that's what kind of really excites me.
Melissa, you and the SharePoint team are contributing to for those that chose SharePoint as their platform, the unique beauty of it in terms of how people interact with content and work with others. And one small note just for this particular year, all of the intranets that were based on SharePoint were in SharePoint Online.
Woohoo!
And I think exactly, I was hoping for a woohoo. And with that, I think in terms of home sites are shipping, and we hear from Sue that she loves them, is very excited about them. Hub sites are seeing their next wave of innovation that's driven by you as they get pushed out the door. There's also the IT flexibility that your peers are designing around site designs, the root site swap, the site URL rename. With all this rolling out, and certainly a lot behind it that's been rolled out, what are you hearing from customers about what they want next in whatever channel you're getting feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get feedback from all types of channels, from user voice to our dedicated customers to our conferences. But I would say it aligns very closely to what we consider our top of mind that we shared at Ignite. So things like branding is an area of focus for us. We want to make sure that people will continue to use our out-of-the-box SharePoint as much as possible. And so really looking into providing more branding options that get people excited to use SharePoint Online and gives them more flexibility of what they want their intranet to look like. Navigation improvements. Navigation is an area where we haven't historically spent a lot of time in, other than add new UI for navigation. We added mega menu and audience targeting, but really building delightful experiences around that is something that I think customers are asking for, that we're starting to look at. Another area that we think about quite a bit is site permissions and improving permissions all up and thinking about how we make that easier to consume. So I would say there's quite a bit of items that we're looking at when we look next and see how we can, listening to the feedback from customers and where we can take the product next and where the areas are that improvements are, fall into those categories. There's more. I think we talked about Teams integration. That's another area that we're going to continue to invest on as well.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about the rollout of home sites, one of the things when I look at one of our customers' engagements that I always see as a signal that it's a tremendously healthy intranet, and I'm not kidding about this, is the rise of what I think of as vacation home sites. And what I mean by that is if you roll it back a few years, the technical requirements to get to that bespoke, engaged experience was high enough that it required dedicated IT resources. And if you think about all the aspects of employee engagement, the ways that people put their personal stamp on it, some of it is directly driven by organizational mission, and some of it is just the organizational culture. And whether it's diversity inclusion areas, or whether it's things like we're going to do a cookie swap, or we're going to have a softball team, the fact that we've lowered the bar to make it possible for people to build those beautiful and engaging sites without needing to bring in dedicated IT resources, what I think of as vacation home sites, really shows me that we're addressing all realms of the spectrum.
You're just now making me think of an oatmeal raisin cookie. That's my vacation right now.
Melissa, I'm going to exempt you a little bit from the next question, just because this is, what do you wish Microsoft would do? Although that's probably a great question for you too, but I really want to make this, fairly quick. But Sue, if you think about the things that we've announced recently and the things that we might announce, if you think back to Ignite, I'd love to get your thought on what was one of your favorite intelligent intranet announcements that you heard there that you couldn't wait to start sharing with your customers.
Well, besides home sites, which as I already said, I really like, there's one simple thing that I think every communications team that I work with is really waiting for, and that is page scheduling, being able to post something and then schedule the date that it's going to come out, which I think will really help comms teams align their editorial calendar more effectively and manage their work much more much better, much easier. And then, of course, the other thing that I think is super exciting is multilingual. And for a large global organization, we want to create content in more than one language. That is just really exciting, and I think people are really looking forward to that.
So, Sue, if we gave you a gift certificate that you could redeem for the one intelligent intranet announcement that Microsoft should make at SPC 20 later this year, what would that announcement be?
I think Melissa kind of knows what this is, and she already mentioned it. I really would like global navigation to be real, And as much as I can think of a million ways to work around having it, I know that when I look at the award-winning intranets that I get to judge as part of the Step 2 contest and the ones that I look at Nielsen Norman, there is that common capability. So people think that they need it. So it'd be just really nice to have.
All right, Melissa. The heat is on.
I know.
Global Navigation gift certificate is in Sue's hands. We want to thank you both for coming on the IntraZone, giving us a lot of insights into the intelligent intranet. We want to make sure people can follow what you're doing, whether it's what you're tweeting, what you're blogging, or the events that you're going to be at. Just take a couple of moments if you can and share where are the best places people can plug into to know more about who you are and what you're up to. Sue, we'll start with you.
Thanks. So I write the Essential SharePoint blog for computerworld.com. So that's one place to find me online. I just wrote a very, very long post. I promise not to do this one so long again about sort of the top 8 things I think every intranet manager should put on their resolutions list for 2020. I'm Susan Hanley on Twitter, and my website is susanhanley.com.
When you submitted your job application to Susan Hanley LLC, how did they not see you as the perfect hire?
Yeah, I don't know, and I get the Employee of the Month parking space every single month.
Excellent. Melissa, how can people find out more about what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter. There are 2 accounts. You can either follow me at Meltorac, Meltorac. But I also have the Mother of Hubs hashtag as well. So you can follow either of those 2. I try to be pretty active and respond. So if you ever have a question or anything, just direct message me on any of those and you can get me.
Excellent. We will link to all of that and more so that people can follow what are Sue and Melissa up to. It'll be sort of like the where is Waldo, but where are Sue and Melissa? But thank you for your time today. We look forward to your FAQs later in the episode and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Thank you guys so much.
So let's transition to get a little bit more focused on what people are actually doing with the intranet and how they might go about learning and consuming how they can use the intelligent intranet to its utmost potential. So let's turn and talk to Matt Wolodarsky. He is a senior program manager on the SharePoint team living in Toronto, Canada, focused primarily on adoption for SharePoint in the intelligent intranet. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So, Matt, I know that you are a repeat visitor to the IntraZone, and thank you very much for that. But for those of our audience who are not keeping up religiously with every episode we put out, could you let our audience know a little bit about who you are, what your role is at Microsoft?
Yeah, so I work within the customer engineering organization inside OneDrive and SharePoint, and my role is very much focused on adoption and customer success. So we're looking at the different ways in which our customers adopt both OneDrive and SharePoint, looking for best practices, patterns, blockers, all those sort of things that contribute to successful adoption. And we look to build programs and solutions that help customers drive adoption and realize the full investments that they've made in these services.
And so how did you get started working with SharePoint in the first place?
That's going to take us back a long way. It's kind of interesting, well, maybe just to me, but I started my career working for Microsoft Canada, actually about 12 years ago now. And so my second role, which is the role I always wanted when joining Microsoft, was actually the SharePoint PMM, the product marketing manager. And that was back in...
And that was a regional PMM, correct? That's a regional
correct,
PMM, so in-country, training everybody in-country, all about SharePoint.
Yeah. Field marketing, doing like marketing campaigns, readying partners, all that sort of good stuff. And then eventually I made my way to Seattle, working in the product marketing group on Office 365 customer success. And from that, I've come full circle back into the SharePoint organization, leveraging my experiences most recently doing customer success for the broader suite, but now zeroing in on the true 2 services that I guess you could say have stolen my heart from the beginning, from when I joined Microsoft.
Well, that makes three of us on the show. For certainly there is a room really big for these hearts, of course, for SharePoint. But now you touch more than SharePoint, because when we talk about the intelligent intranet, it's SharePoint++, plus a lot of other products and capabilities, which I know you're wrapping together. Before we get into the details of the program or into the content itself, how would you describe the moving these programs at scale? I think of that as, a webinar or a blog post, but these are a lot more individualized in-person activities, one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to maybe a lot of customers. How would you describe the scale of the program?
Yeah, so Mark, great question. When we plan out these programs, we do think about the different levels at which we can engage with customers and the levels of scale that we want to have in order to reach our customers. So there are events, for example, events that are coming up as part of the Ignite Tour, where we go out and do workshops where many customers come and attend and learn about how they can drive alignment and vision for their intelligent intranet. We also have offerings where we've partnered with Microsoft services to be able to go out and engage with customers and deliver some of these kind of adoption and planning programs one-on-one with the customer. So there are kind of a number of levels of scale, and for the ultimate scale, of course, would be making sure from these learnings that we have in engaging with customers that we now bring this to all customers. And so you'll see a lot of our content up on docs.microsoft.com, where we provide a lot of guidance on helping customers realize the value of the intelligent intranet.
So I just want to ask, you were mentioning some of the workshops that are available. What are some of the ways that customers could encounter one of those workshops if they're interested?
Yeah, we might have a workshop coming to your city soon. As I mentioned, we're going around the world right now as part of the Ignite Tour. There's about 18 cities in total that we're reaching out to or going to be delivering this workshop, and it's open to any customer to come. We have done a couple of them, but we still have many more over the coming weeks and months. And what I would do is point customers to a website, aka.ms/WAC intranet workshop, where they can go and learn more about the workshop, see the cities that we're going to be coming to and the dates, and then, of course, take the action of registering and coming out and attending these events. So definitely would encourage listeners who are in one of those cities or are able to make it to please come out and learn more about how to accelerate your intelligent intranet in your organization.
We will make sure to get that link from you. I also had published a blog that was a little bit more broad about just the tour itself, and all the sessions and the workshop is included, where people can go and they'll see it. The SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, and Stream content aligned with the cities that are also supporting one of the intranet workshops. So we'll make sure to have all those links in the show notes. But really to get into the content, Matt, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for customers with the intelligent intranet, and what are the biggest challenges to them realizing this value?
Yeah, great question. We know today a lot of our customers are focused on digital transformation, and a big part of that is the digital workplace. We think that the intelligent intranet kind of sits square in that and is really a foundational piece. And that's because it offers all sorts of great value for organizations. First off, for example, it helps improve employee engagement and communication. It also can help connect people to the organization and colleagues from wherever those colleagues may be working. And then finally, I think there's a great opportunity with the intelligent intranet and other investments that Microsoft is making, like Project Cortex, to harness the collective knowledge and expertise of the organization.
So, although it's, I love seeing a Cortex shout out, I kind of want to stop you there and ask, one thing I hear about from customers is the move to digital transformation, which is increasingly driven by digital workplaces and digital hubs. Microsoft's answer for that is Teams. So with the intelligent intranet coming out of the SharePoint organization, do you find customers are understanding the interrelationship of Teams to all of this?
I think for the most part, the intranet is so ingrained in a lot of organizations as a construct, as a meaningful construct that provides all sorts of value, that it does have a place next to other collaboration tools like Teams, which are really much more about bringing teams together quickly to work on projects and get stuff done. The intranet is giving employees across the organization really a sense of place. It's a digital space, a digital place, but it's giving them a sense of who the company is, what the culture is, what the news is, what exciting things are happening within the organization. And it can also act, as you bring in things like Yammer, as a way to connect people across the organization to talk about topics that they're really passionate about, or participate in communities related to disciplines that are a big part of their job. It's also a great way to be able to find what you need to do your job, and we're getting increasingly more sophisticated, and I'll use the term intelligent, to help people cut through the noise and find the insights and the information they need to get their work done. So yeah, I think if you think about the intranet as sort of a way to connect the whole organization, I think Teams, it's really about doing work with project teams.
Well, one thing I wanted to get into from the challenges perspective, in talking with you, preparing for this interview, a lot of what you expressed was that the technology, all the products we've just listed and named, are not always the hardest part. When you talk to customers and you start to train them through building an intelligent intranet, when you get into the challenges that aren't the technology, how do you describe that, and how do you get people over those hurdles about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to answer that, but just to further kind of validate my statement about how the tech isn't necessarily the hardest part in these sort of projects. And that's because there's been such rapid innovation in the intranet space. And from a Microsoft perspective, over the last couple of years, we've been bringing a lot of intranet-related innovation into SharePoint Online and more broadly, Microsoft 365. That includes things like home sites, communication sites, Microsoft Search, hub sites, and many more new capabilities. But the bigger challenge, going back to your original question, and fully realizing the value of an intelligent intranet, I think is much more related to getting the right buy-in and alignment across the different stakeholders that are vital to launching and getting adopted a new intranet. It's not just that, though. You need, obviously, to meet the needs of your end users, and you need to show the impact of your work so that you have credibility to get further investment in building out your digital workplace.
It's interesting hearing you talk about that. The question that occurs to me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is when do you do this? Because from Microsoft's perspective, we have an evergreen service. We're always innovating. And so now is the best time to start from our perspective. But there's lots of triggers that can really help accelerate a customer's adoption, because there's going to be much more buy-in all the way through the cycle. Obviously, when there's been a merger and there's a chance to kind of forge a new combined identity, is a good opportunity to use the intranet as a way of creating that shared space. Are there some others that you have heard from customers that are good triggers for why you should embark on this journey?
I think many of the triggers I've heard in the past are related to just now being outdated, because they built their intranet so long ago, in some cases 10 or 15 years ago. And so all sorts of inefficiencies come with that, obviously, not just for IT and still trying to manage that as an on-premise solution, but also for the business users who have accountability for publishing content. It's just a painful process. So oftentimes that can spark rejuvenation of the intranet, or a desire to rebuild their intranet, move it to the cloud to get some of the IT efficiencies, but also use that as an opportunity to revisit what's our vision for this? What are the outcomes that we want to drive? How do we want to help our employees be able to work more effectively and harness knowledge from across the organization? So oftentimes it comes from just, hey, it's been a really long time. The technology has moved so much further ahead to even remain competitive, not just with other companies who compete in our market space, but also for talent. Like, think about if you're a new employee joining a company and you've come from a company that has an amazing intranet and you're moving to a company that has a 15-year-old intranet, that is going to be a pretty big disappointment. And, it's not uncommon for people to think about leaving the job that they've just joined. And this could be one of those reasons, having outdated technology. I think, other drivers that I've seen that I think do warrant mention are just this increased focus on employee engagement. We know that employees who are engaged are much more productive, are much more likely to stay with the company for a long time. And so their current intranet just isn't able to deliver that in a meaningful way. And we're not talking about engagement where employees hear from the CEOs or the VPs in a top-down sort of communication style. No, these employees want to engage bidirectionally across the organization, up or down. They want to be able to hear from leaders and be able to engage in those conversations. So there's a couple different common triggers I've seen.
So if the triggers are there and IT, end users, even business decision makers are staring at their stale, older portal that's been doing well up until this point, and there's this new art of the possible, and there's this want to have more engaged employees, what can customers do to overcome the obvious challenges that they're faced to be able to get to this new picture that we're painting for an intelligent intranet?
Yeah, absolutely. There is an approach that we've developed that's based on observing many, many customers. And it's really about going through this alignment and planning process with your stakeholders for delivering an intelligent intranet. And so this process, is not something that has to take a long time. What we would recommend, in fact, is get the right people in the room over the course of a couple days and go through these important alignment exercises. So let me just spend a moment talking about what those key activities are to drive the alignment and to overcome some of the challenges that are typical when organizations go to plan and roll out their intranet. So first off, obviously, really, really important to get stakeholder buy-in. Many different stakeholder groups who have some sort of ownership or connection to the intranet, and so it's really important to make sure they understand the art of the possible. I'm using air quotes here, but
are Canadian air quotes the same as United States air quotes? Do you do it the same way?
They're higher up.
They're higher up. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got really high air quotes going now. Go.
Really, really high. Yeah,
and
that's something.
And they're less. They're less ironic. They're more. They're more honest.
Exactly. So in terms of getting that stakeholder buy-in, really important to demonstrate what's possible with this technology. And that really gets the creative juices going of your different stakeholders. But what's most important is understanding the business priorities and challenges of your stakeholders. You need to understand what they care about so you can work with them to identify a set of scenarios, intranet-related scenarios, that are going to have them invest their time, invest their resources, and essentially buy in. It's answering that age-old question that all of us ask, like when we're asked to change behavior or invest time in something. The place to start really is getting stakeholder buy-in. And this involves demonstrating to your key stakeholders the art of the possible. This is really important to get their creative juices going and starting to think about how can they apply intranet-related technology and scenarios to solve some of their biggest business challenges. And so understanding their priorities and their challenges is kind of the table stakes where you need to start with your stakeholders in order to get them fully bought in.
So who are the stakeholders?
Yeah, for an intranet, what we typically see, obviously IT plays a critical role, corporate communications, can oftentimes be a critical stakeholder, or in some organizations, I've even seen them as the owner of the intranet. HR is another very, very common stakeholder group for intranets. Those are the main ones that I've come across in working with customers on intranets. It's not exclusive to that. You're going to get, obviously, different combinations and different stakeholder groups beyond HR and corporate communications. What I always try to encourage customers is go beyond those traditional stakeholder groups. Like, have a line of business, really participate in your upfront planning and alignment exercise. Because eventually you're going to have to roll this out, right, to all sorts of lines of business. So having an initial guinea pig can help give you a template to apply as you move forward.
Right. And, I wrote a blog post a couple years ago about how finding, as you're getting those internal champions, IT and HR are obvious. But how you find the next organization, because we've all seen those intranet projects where you have, hey, we built a homepage for the manufacturing division. Here it is. And they're like, well, what is this? I didn't ask for it. And 6 years later, it hasn't been updated.
Right.
When we talked, in preparation for this, you talked about the best practices across end users to move from a pilot, obviously, to push them through adoption. And I think what I hear you and Chris talking about is you do a lot of upfront awareness. You do a lot of getting started, at a smaller scale to then ramp up and roll out. And I know from a couple of customers that we've highlighted on the show or in previous efforts where they really do start with, here's a prime example of what's possible, whether it's a high value use of a team site or what is a communication site, how can it work? And then certainly bringing that all together if they have the need and the want for a hub site. But taking all of the technology out of it and putting it into what are you trying to accomplish? If it looks something like this, we've got a great template. Let's start there and then roll it out more at scale.
And I also think it's important to express it in stakeholder terms, because realistically, nobody wants a hub site. Nobody wants a hub site.
I want a hub site.
No, my point is, people say, I want better integration, better navigation, and being able to understand solving the problem in defining the solution in terms that the stakeholder has an affinity for.
So let's talk resources. One of the big ones that we know you're deeply involved in is the lookbook. But besides the lookbook, maybe you can describe what the lookbook is and then really get into where our listeners can go to get started and what type of resources are available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Lookbook is a website that you can go to that includes all sorts of different SharePoint templates that I think, first off, give you some inspiration on what a beautiful SharePoint site can look like. There's obviously been a lot of advancements in terms of the design capability of SharePoint. So this is a great way to get some good examples to take advantage of the very best from a design perspective. But what's really cool about these site templates is they can actually be installed in your tenant environment. And that's something with the right permissions you can do in a matter of minutes. And so there's a number of different site templates that serve different organizational use cases, like a leadership site or a sales portal, a training workshop site. So these can be really practical starting points for some quick wins that you might want to get working on while you're working on the broader intranet to get some early value and build some momentum. So that's the Lookbook. Go there, check out some of the amazing templates are there, and start installing some of those and configuring them to make them yours. So definitely would encourage that. In addition to the Lookbook, we have all sorts of adoption related resources up on aka.mswac SharePoint adoption that not only includes the typical stuff that you would expect, templates for awareness campaigns, training documentation, training videos, but we also have, going back to the conversation about getting that alignment with stakeholders, we've got a whole envisioning deck that has different template sides and outlines the process really that you can go through with your internal stakeholders to get that alignment and to help accelerate and move things along. And then finally, we spoke about those events. I would encourage you to go to aka.ms/WAC intranet workshop, find the upcoming event in your city. And then for those of you that are looking for help beyond these resources, Microsoft Services offering just launched a 2-day workshop that customers can engage with. It's called the Intelligent Intranet Ideation Workshop. And if you're interested in that, they can help you through this alignment process to help come up with a vision and set of next steps. And I would encourage you to talk to your Microsoft account team to learn more about that and see how you might engage Microsoft Services for that.
I know from the past how we used to structure the intranet around an on-premises deployment, possibly years with millions of dollars, and sometimes not getting to some of the important end-user capabilities like mobile. We've talked about it before, where there are a lot of parts and pieces missing purely because of time and resources. And I know for a fact a lot of the way that the team is building the intranet and the way that it's mapped with the resources that you're providing to give people both awareness, training, and then actual templates to get started and accelerate that, not only adoption, but just getting to that point where you can see, as you've stated, the art of the possible, but in a tangible way, not just a picture in a PDF, but something they can touch and start to manipulate in their own tenant. I know that the common time now to stand up an intranet is measured in months, and that's including the planning and including the rollout, with a lot of in between of design and making sure you build out the right sites. So we certainly want to say thank you for joining the show, but I will thank you on behalf of our customers for making their life easier and to be able to take on these big, bold initiatives to move from a stale portal to a very intelligent intranet and making that easier for them. So thank you for that as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
And we hope you'll stick around for our frequently asked questions with the rest of the panel.
Absolutely.
So at this point in the show, you are filled with a ton of great knowledge from people who live and breathe the intranet day in, day out, with the primary goal of giving you what you need and obviously giving you the direction that you need to provide to your stakeholders and out throughout all of your users. But with that, we know that there are a lot more questions that you have. So let's turn to talk about FAQs across all of our guests. We'll start with Melissa. Melissa, what is your most frequently asked question these days?
So I consistently get asked the question around, for my intranet architecture, how important is it that I get it right the first time? And how much time and energy should I spend thinking about it? And my answer to that question is, I think to Sue's earlier point, it's about what business outcomes when you're building your intranet. But the good thing is, with the tools we've given you so far, it's meant to be flexible. So you can start with the first kind of idea that you get, build it around that, and you have the flexibility to change it and grow it as you go. So you can start, for example, with a simple hub, start with just one, and then grow to have more as your organization kind of matures and you see the need for more. So don't go into analysis paralysis, just get started somewhere and then grow from there.
I like that. And once you get started, just to know, you will never be finished.
That is true.
Sue, you must get a lot of questions. How would you boil it down to what are you most being asked these days?
I think the question I get asked most persistently, and I actually had it asked of me twice just in the past week, was, should I create a team site or a communication site? And in fact, I wrote a blog post on this, and it still gets thousands of views per month, and it's been a year since I wrote that post. So I get this question a lot. And I think the answer is that you need to think about teams versus communication sites from an outcome perspective. Is my outcome goal to provide content that most people will read and consume? Then you clearly want a communication site, even if there may be a form or a list where everybody can contribute. If your outcome is about teamwork and working towards a shared goal or an outcome or a project, then you want a team, and therefore you'll get a team site. And if your goal is to create a community of practice based on a discipline or topic, then you actually want a combination of the above. You probably want a Yammer community that you surface to the organization on a communication site to give it some visibility.
We will certainly put both your answer, as it is, plus a link to your article for the long form of getting great guidance on team sites versus communication sites, really more when to use them and getting the right questions answered before you go. So let us turn to Matt. Matt, what is the most frequently asked question that you're getting? And of course, the biggest value as you have shared the entire show, what you provide as an answer.
Yeah, I often hear from customers who are stuck sometimes in this analysis paralysis. They feel like they have to boil the ocean. So they will ask, where should we get started? There's so much we can do. Where should we really get started? And what I suggest to them is going through that process, once you understand the priorities of your business sponsors, what are some good scenarios that address those? And then really zero in on one of those that has the most impact and is fairly easy to implement, because you want to take that and deliver it as a quick win. That's going to drive some momentum. That's going to demonstrate to your stakeholders the value and get them further bought in. So don't try to do everything at the same time. Prioritize and build your plan from there, but try to get a quick win out there early to build some real momentum.
I think just to put a little color on that, because I know you have a lot of great scenarios, what's maybe 2 or 3 just words or phrases to describe the scenarios that you most commonly hear, or at least articulate as a great place to start?
Yeah, one of the most common is definitely a new hire site. So companies need to onboard new employees, and building a new hire site to take them on that journey, very much targeted at new hires and their needs, is a kind of a big scenario that many customers are thinking about these days.
All right, so Mr. Chris, we've gotten FAQs from Melissa, Sue, and Matt. I'm anxious. What is your FAQ this week?
Well, one that comes up from time to time is how can I help find and select the best ISV partner out there? Because we have a broad range of tools that are available through Microsoft 365, but our partners are always great at finding new solutions, things like Salesforce integration, which obviously are not native to Microsoft. And we love all our partners, but trying to find the most durable solutions out there, the questions to ask are really to focus on partners who are delivering to what we call the SharePoint modern interface. There are some fine solutions that are based on Classic, but the risk with that is Classic mode web experiences are shutting out all of the innovation that we deliver. So when we bring something in from Power Platform or from Cortex or from SharePoint natively, it's much harder to then go back and repaint that into all the Classic mode pages manually. So there's lots of other reasons, but Modern offers so many advantages and is a much richer and more durable platform to be able to base solutions on. So that's the question I would ask my ISV partners. Mark, what's your frequently asked question this week?
So this week, and it's on topic, we always get questions around what are the limits in SharePoint in Microsoft 365. And to the limit of what we've been talking about, one of the questions is how many hub sites am I able to create in my tenant? And over time, the answer has definitely changed and I think matured and grown up with both expectation and actual use. We started with 100 hub sites per tenant. We moved to 200, and recently at the Ignite conference, we announced that you can now create up to 2,000 hub sites in a single tenant. The value and beauty of a hub site is it then can aggregate a number of, almost an infinite number, but usually a common number is several tens or hundreds of sites, team sites and communication sites aligned under a hub site. So you think of a hub site as a parent level. One note here is a hub site is created by the tenant admin, but then delegated to an owner. So once somebody owns a hub site, they can further delegate who can add to their sites, but they can also make sure to control who can or can't join their hub site. So once it's created, the number of sites underneath the hub site certainly is a bigger number. But that's one a lot of people are tracking and asking about. So the current number is 2,000 hub sites per tenant.
That's great. If you have a question for us or for our guests, be sure to write to the IntraZone and we'll be happy to spotlight it in a future episode. But don't go away. Up next, we'll highlight upcoming events near and far in SharePoint, Office 365, and beyond.
So we mentioned one thing. We're going to jump a little bit out of order here because we were talking with Matt about Ignite the Tour and the relationship of the intranet workshop that's at 18 of the 30 cities. First, the details around Ignite the Tour. This is certainly an echo off of the big show that we had in November of 2019. It continues in 2020, and currently in February, the Ignite the Tour is in many cities: Washington, D.C., Dubai, Sydney, Taipei, Singapore, Prague, and Copenhagen. And all the while, Chris and I have been refining content, getting feedback from previous cities to hopefully make the next city even better or as best as we can make it.
And the rumor is that we have a giant risk board where the sponsors of different cities get to play, and eventually someone will do Ignite Tour Kamchatka. No, there's no risk tour. But it just seems like every year there's just more places that we're going.
Yeah, there's a ton of cities. It's actually very low risk because it is a free event. It has great content. We know that from feedback that we're getting already, but also that we're taking the best of Ignite and bringing it in a regional sense. From a SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, and Stream perspective, there is a content learning path that gets you through all of those 4 sessions. And certainly there's a lot more that's offered to talk with people. There's definitely workshops and other things you can get into. One thing that we want to make sure to call out and be sure that you check out is a new podcast that follows Ignite the Tour. This is called The Uptake. In each episode, Microsoft's own Anna Chu talks with tour city locals in the tech community, Ignite speakers, and others with current issues in technology, personal career journeys, professional learning, how-tos, and more. This week's episode highlights the tour in Johannesburg. Anna talks with 2 Microsoft's most passionate MVPs, Nicholas Blank and Tracy Vanderschiff, both based in South Africa. So look for The Uptake with Anna Chu on the techcommunity.microsoft.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
There's other free events going on around the world. SharePoint Saturdays are a great way for users and IT alike to meet each other and learn more from experts in the community, and they're free. And you can learn about upcoming events at spsevents.org. 2 or 3 we want to spotlight that are coming up soon. Friday, February...
Wait a minute. Is it called SharePoint Friday now?
I think there's an asterisk. But Friday. Free Friday. February 7th, Salt Lake, M365 Friday. You can find out more at hashtag M365Friday on Twitter. Saturday, February 8th, SPS Chennai, India, and at SPS Chennai on Twitter. And coming up in about a month, Office 365 Saturday, here in Redmond, right on the Microsoft campus, March 7th. You'll be able to find information about SharePoint and more. You can learn more at spsevents.org about this.
We have one last event shout out to a great event in Cologne, Germany. This is called ShareCamp, and this is their 10th time holding this event. It'll be on March 7th and 8th, and it's at the Microsoft office in Cologne. This is a very local event driven by many friends of the community. Some of the points of contact you might have heard: Henning Eiben, plus Andre Kramer, Andre Doms, Nikki Borrell, and Christoph Glessner. The focus is on all topics related to communication and collaboration with the Microsoft tech stack. You can find out more on their website, which is sharecamp.de. Warning, this is in German, but in today's technology, you can certainly convert and read it in your own language. And on behalf of Chris and I would like to not only shout out to the ShareCamp, but to say, Hallo aus der Introzone. And I hope I didn't butcher that too much in Germany, but we welcome you and thank you for supporting the community in the way that you do on this 10th anniversary.
Up next on the Intrazone, it's a surprise segment. Something so new, even Mark doesn't know what's coming.
Shaking.
It's now IAQ, for infrequently asked questions. Because as you know, Mark, I love to work a sports reference into at least every broadcast we do.
Deep breath, go.
So later in February, Seattle who already has been awarded a National Hockey League franchise, will announce the name of the new franchise. In a little history here, Seattle did have a hockey team over 100 years ago, which won the Stanley Cup. The Seattle Metropolitans won in 1916. And then it went away, but now Seattle is big, we're back, we're bold, we're better than ever, and getting a hockey team. The 4 lead contenders for the name are the Seattle Sockeyes, the Seattle Totems, the Seattle Metropolitans and the Seattle Kraken.
Kraken.
Wondered what if you had a preference for those.
I'm just going to say the Kraken might be the fourth one you threw in there just to be cheeky and silly. But I'll take your word for it. I personally like the Seattle Sockeyes. We're certainly known in the Northwest for salmon. There's a specific salmon that runs very narrowly. That's the Copper River salmon. It's really tasty. But I think it just kind of resonates, fairly agnostic, to let me start that over. And I think it just resonates. It has maybe a good taste to the name.
I like how you put that. We'll have to check back in a future episode to see if you were right.
Well, thank you for that infrequently answered now question. We'll see if that holds true in our audience feedback. If you liked infrequently asked questions, let us know. We want to thank our guests, Sue Hanley, Melissa Torres, and Matt Wolodarsky. Check out our show page for links to all of what we discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theintrozone. And if you're curious about other Microsoft shows, check out aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts and listen to a new show today.
We'd love you to reach out with your questions or feedback for the SharePoint engineering and product teams. You can email us at theintrozone@microsoft.com or reach us on Twitter @SharePoint, @mcashman, and @cmcnulty2000. Please tell all your friends, colleagues, family members, churchgoers, people you see in the community, folks who work on your car, about the Introzone, because you never know when you're going to make a new connection. Please share the love. Subscribe at your local hockey arena or wherever you get your podcasts.
I like that hockey reference. We are your hosts, the non-hockey player Mark Cashman, and possibly a hockey player in the past, Chris McNulty. You've been listening to The Introzone, a show about the Microsoft 365 intelligent intranet powered by Sue, Melissa, and Matt.
And now, we bid you good night. We hope you've enjoyed The Introzone, Late Night Edition. This is your co-host, Captain SharePoint, signing off.